2014 and 2015, Ukrainian law enforcement officers detained close to 1,000 people on charges of involvement in separatism or cooperation with Russian special services. Not all of them were proven guilty, but some of them were later handed over to the so-called Luhansk and Donetsk People's Republics, in exchange for Ukrainian prisoners of war and civilian hostages. The rights of these people have not yet been restored. The story of Serhiy Shulakov, a 42-year-old businessman from frontline Popasna, serves as a good illustration of this practice. In late 2014, Ukraine Security Service, or SBU, accused him of spotting during an artillery strike upon his hometown.
On December the 3rd, I was fixing cars in my service yard when I see a hand reaching over the fence, trying to unlock the gate. I open up, and it's the SBU operatives, the usual stuff. First thing, they take me down hard, had to lie face down in the snow for a bit, but nothing too bad. They search the service yard, find nothing. Then they go to my home and find ammunition, which I have a permit for. At the time, I was certain it would all be resolved and all would be well.
The accusations against Shulakov were based on a phone conversation between the man and an acquaintance of his, who had previously joined the Russia-led separatists.
Their conversation was roughly as follows: "Serhiy, we are shelling Popasna today. Are you willing to support for us?" Shulakov's reply was yes, that he'll do it. Then another conversation was recorded with an, quote, unidentified man, unquote. Shulakov calls and says, "Good afternoon, I need to see you immediately."
Shulakov spent close to a month in a remand center, unable to contact his relatives or a lawyer. He was then delivered to Donetsk as part of an exchange. It took him 5 days to get back to his hometown. 6 months later, he managed to prove his innocence in court. The unidentified man who Shulakov spoke to following his conversation with the so-called LPR militiaman turned out to be the local chief of police, whom Serhiy informed of the upcoming shelling.
The police chief wasn't questioned until much later. It was he who proved that Shulakov was to thank for the tip on there and when the shelling of Popasna would begin that day, enabling the Ukrainian army to spread the LPR firing positions.
An entire neighborhood came under fire. Densely built 5-story buildings. Naturally, many residential buildings were hit, mortars or maybe something else. Yes, everyone was either in basements or bomb shelters. I was glad that no one was killed. It struck somewhere around here. Well, it was all restored. Everything was repaired quickly. All these windows are new, they were installed by a humanitarian organization. And this kindergarten, well, it was restored too. It worked at the time. All the kindergartens were open.
Over 30 of the accusation's witnesses testified in Shulakov's favor. The prosecutor's office is challenging the acquittal.
Of course, I still want to fight, since I know that the truth is behind me. But most likely they are trying to wear me down because the government is not used to losing, especially when it comes to Article 258(1), drawing someone into a terrorist act. First of all, you need the right spirit for that. Secondly, the material side of things, because of all the traveling made by me and the witnesses.
Serhiy Shulakov's story is not unique. In the first few years of the war, people were detained en masse under separatist articles, partly to offer someone in exchange for prisoners of war in Ukraine.
They may have taken some part in the so-called referendum and the events preceding it. Maybe they even supported. Then, in December 2014, January 2014, the arrests began. Men in masks, armed with machine guns, searched their houses. The people were subsequently thrown into a minibus, blindfolded, and taken to some basement where an often excessive interrogation would take place. After that, they would memorize a statement and read it on a camera, namely that they were informants for the so-called Donetsk People's Republic, or that they have directed artillery fire or something. And then they were all brought together, for some with an additional stop at the SBU building in Izum. Others were brought directly to the Kharkiv SBU building. They knew they were needed for prisoner exchange from the start. They were told that.
Activists who worked in collaboration with the SBU note that this phenomenon was brought about by the militants themselves, who would demand 5 hostages for every captured Ukrainian soldier.
There was no definite understanding how many people each side had, so both sides were simply stockpiling captives for future exchange, or to have enough to offer in exchange for someone actually valuable.
Human rights advocates estimate that over 1,000 people have been through this so-called exchange pool over the years of war.
Over 2014-2016, the numbers may range from several hundred to several thousand persons, because by 2016 several thousand had already been exchanged. And these are only the ones accounted for, the ones we know of. And there were under-the-table exchanges as well.
But not everybody wanted to be exchanged, however. During the penultimate big exchange on December 27, 2017, alone, 15 people on the list refused to go to the occupied Donbass.
Я обвиняюсь по статье 185 части 4, это кража. Никак не связано ни с политикой, ни с чем не связано. 23 числа мне поменяли меру пресечения на домашний арест и привезли на обмен. С какой ситуации, как, я даже не знаю.
Я отказываюсь от обмена пленными, поскольку здесь мой дом, моя родина, моя семья, близкие мои друзья. То есть не советую я ехать туда никому.
Почему?
Nичего там хорошего нету, все.
On the contrary, some of the detainees were arrested for over a year, but the militants of the so-called republics refused to include them on their lists. These people were eventually freed following an international scandal, which erupted after a mission from the UN Committee Against Torture was barred from entering a number of SBU buildings, reportedly holding illegal detainees. In protest, the mission suspended its work in Ukraine, issuing a condemnatory statement addressed to the Ukrainian government.
They were all released in a similar fashion, driven out in the direction of their hometowns and dropped off every kilometer or so with instructions to keep quiet about what had happened.
OHCHR stresses that by withholding prisoners for future exchanges, the Ukrainian government violated not only the rights of those detained. In the event that the person exchanged was indeed guilty, the victims were essentially deprived of any hope of seeing them brought to justice.
All those legally detained by SBU operatives were to be sent to remand prisons. However, this was at a tricky time, when the SBU had their doubts concerning the loyalty of pre-trial detention center staff. And to preserve the secrecy of these operations, they came up with this solution, holding the detainees in their own detention centers.
In perpetrating these violations, the state had in mind the additional aim of freeing others. Can such crimes be forgiven? I don't know, but probably not. And it may turn out that we will have to answer for them, say, in the European Court of Human Rights. This is a very ambiguous issue and a very complex one.
The issue has not been resolved to this day. The Minsk agreements refer to such exchanges as the simultaneous release of detained persons, yet this procedure has not been regulated under Ukrainian legislation. According to experts, this opens the Ukrainian government up to accusations of kidnapping and delivering the hostages into the hands of illegal military groups.
It's 2019, yet we still have neither laws regulating such exchanges nor places to legally hold such detainees. And any escalation in the East may once again lead to the same violations.
And what of Sergei Shulakov? After the exchange, he found himself in a tight spot. Crossing checkpoints became difficult. He was often stopped and subjected to lengthy checks.
They took shots at me a couple of times. The bullet whizzed past my ear. A couple of times they had me handcuffed out in the freezing cold with a bag over my head for 2 or 3 hours straight. And then I'm in all the registers, so they think they'd get a reward for handing me in. They call the SBU, especially in the evenings when I'm on my way home. And then, of course, reaching the SBU and checking up information takes time. And then they say, "Oh, we've sorted it now, so you can leave."
He received threats from the other side as well.
They'd write text messages saying I'm a junta accomplice, and so on. Social media too. They'd send me my house's coordinates and write, "We'll mortar the place. You've got 2 little ones there. We'll take good care of you. Here's our regards."
Shulakov continues with his business and raises 2 daughters with his wife. He says he's in Popasna to stay.
Every time the national anthem starts playing, my daughter places her hand on her heart. My younger daughter is calm about all of this as well. I'm not in anyone's way. I've been an entrepreneur for the past 19 years. I dutifully pay my taxes. Even at the times of heavy shelling and fighting, we paid our taxes for everything, even when we couldn't work. This system needs to work for us. It's hard, but that's okay. I dug in, bit the bullet. What else could I do?
But he's sure that publishing this story will complicate his situation. But he's ready for it, because he says he wants justice not just for himself.
You know how it is. While you stay quiet, out of sight, everyone's happy. But as soon as you poke your head out, they go, "Aha, we'd forgotten about you." That's how it's going to be. I'll call you later, in a couple months, tell you about it.